oh, the cancer's back. We're really struggling. People get that. But when they say, hey, how you making out? And I say, oh, I'm really struggling. My son's just been convicted of murder. How do you have that conversation with anybody?
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, today we're going to be hearing from someone with a perspective that you don't often hear. We're going to be speaking to the mother of a murderer. A woman reached out to us with the subject line, "My son is a murderer," and she writes in it that her 33-year-old son was just convicted of first-degree murder and has been sentenced to life in prison, and she is now responsible for raising his 11-year-old daughter. And she mentioned in the email that in these cases, there's typically no support, not necessarily any platform for the parents of people who commit murder to really get any support or talk to anyone. So we're going to hear her perspective and learn all about this. And we've got the guests on the line. And thank you so much for being on today.
Hi, thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story. I do appreciate it.
No, of course. And, we always like to say thank you for choosing us and trusting us with your story. We know that this can't be something that's easy to talk about. So we really do appreciate when people kind of put their trust in us to listen and talk about these things.
Thanks.
So can you just tell us, your son, you said, was just convicted of first-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison. What did he do? When did you find out about this? And how long ago was he convicted?
So I got a Facebook message from one of his ex-girlfriends on a Sunday afternoon. And it simply said, and I'm going to use his real first name, just because that's how I refer to him. And it's all out there in public record. So I'm going to use his real first name. She said, "Have you heard about Zach?" And I said, "What about him?" And she said, "He just shot so-and-so."
Wow.
And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, he was just arrested in this location of the town. He shot this guy and this guy is dead. And that was August of 2023.
What was your initial reaction when you heard this news?
To be honest, given the history, and I'm sure we can touch on it a little bit later, but it's a call I kind of always was waiting for. Either he's killed someone or someone's killed him.
So I think judging by that comment, would you say that growing up, your son was, there was signs of like, oh, this kid might be a little, violent, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. He started with behavioral issues when he was 2. I remember the daycare calling me saying he's wildly out of control. You've got to come pick him up, blah, blah, blah. That started when he was 2 years old. I was also a very young mom. I was 18 when I had him. And I would say for the first year of his life, I was picture perfect mom. And then after that, I kind of realized the things I was missing out on. And he became secondary. And that's being honest. Nothing abusive, nothing. He wasn't abandoned. He wasn't neglected. But my time could be spent, in my opinion, in other ways that were more exciting than my son. So that manifested itself quite early. That phase in our life didn't last long, but I think the remnants of whatever a 2 and 3-year-old picks up have lasted a lifetime. So that's when things started. He was in and out of what we call group homes. I'm not sure what you would call them there, like a juvenile hall, but in a private home instead of an actual center. Mm-hmm. He did spend time in juvenile detention. He has.
What was he
held
getting
up-
in trouble for? Was it like he was getting into fights, or he was like robbing people or something?
Yeah, I was just about to let you know
Oh,
that.
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. There's a lot to this. One of the instances I remember is he held up a convenience store with a knife, and I remember that was the first really serious incident, and the first time I knew that it wasn't just going to be this petty getting into trouble, getting kicked out of school, ringing people's doorbells and knocking over their mailboxes. It was going to be something more than that. Later on down the line, he held up a hotel with a gun. All of this, though, I have to say, stems from drug use and drug culture, and getting money for drugs. That's kind of how it all started. It revolved around drugs. And I think once you get into that life, especially here in my city, there's about 100,000 people in my city. We're pretty small. But the drug culture is huge, getting bigger, and he's been a part of it.
And you said that he held up the first one was when he held up a store with a knife. How old was he when that happened?
I believe he was 15. Maybe not that old. And I'll tell you, it's been he's 33 now. He's a month older a month younger than you are, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been since about the age of 12. So over 20 years, it's been one thing after another. So the timeline isn't always straight in my head these days. But he was either 13 or 15 when that happened. And obviously was convicted and went to juvenile detention. And he would get out and get into the same crowd of people doing the same stuff and go right back in.
Did you maintain a close relationship with him in those years, or did you become estranged?
With the first incident where he held up the store with the knife, and like I said, I knew it was going to be, we were kind of going to get into some serious things as we went. I actually went through a process where I didn't speak to him for about 3 months. I was mourning the loss of what I knew to be my son, and was introduced to this new guy that I had to get to know. And it wasn't that I didn't speak to him because I was upset with him or angry. I mean, I was those things. It was more so I was in a grieving mourning process, and I came out of work. I was heavily sedated. I mean, I slept, I think, for the first 3 weeks. It was a big shift in my life and what was going to be the rest of our relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a moment of acceptance. Like, I know people always want to say, don't give up on someone you love, but it seems like there was clarity around the fact that maybe you felt helpless, or that there was nothing that you could do to save him from going down this path. Is that accurate?
I think that's what it was again, because, the first, while he was 2-3 years old, I was not the best mom, but I came back around and did the best I could. And then after this first incident where he robbed the store and I kind of went my own way for a little while, I remember my mother saying to me, "Have you spoken to him lately?" And I said, I don't know if I can. Everything's changed. And she said, "Well, what hasn't changed is that he's your son." And I went back to him. After that, I found my way back to him, and I've never left his side again, ever, no matter what it's been. No matter what he's done. I don't accept what he's done. I don't condone it. I don't excuse it. But he is still my son, and I will support him in whatever way I'm able to during this relationship that we have.
Yeah, it's powerful that, I guess, that love can transcend, even if you don't like the person or like who the person has become, but there's just, a connection, I guess, and a bond that can't be broken because that's your son. When he committed this murder, a little less than a year ago. What was your relationship at that point? You were still in his life, supporting him, trying to help?
So the incident happened in August of 2023.
Okay.
And I would say for the last maybe 2 months prior to that incident, there wasn't a huge amount of communication between us, only because he was so involved in the drug culture at that time. He, and over, I would say, the 2 years before he committed this murder, he tried to commit suicide several times. At one point, actually sliced his arm so badly that they thought he should have died. He has no use of his hand as a result of that. There have been a number of incidents. And he was living with me during the suicide attempts and all of that stuff, but also still quite heavily into drugs. Well, my husband has been battling cancer since October of 2019. And between the cancer and the drugs, I was getting burnout. We live in an apartment and we were going to be evicted. So I had to tell my son that he had to leave the house. And that was awful. That was really, really awful. But we maintained a relationship. But him not being in the house, being a drug addict, had no source of income, hadn't maintained lifelong, beautiful friendships, really had nowhere to go except to the street, which was heartbreaking as his mother. But again, for years, I had done anything and everything I could for this child to help. Some of it was, I was a shitty parent when you were a baby and I'm going to try and make up for it now. And other parts of it were, you're my son, I'm going to love you through it. Other parts of it were, I know there are programs out there, let's get you into it. We were doing so much to try and help. And he was hell-bent on living the life he led. So a couple of months before the incident, we hadn't been speaking a whole great deal because he was so involved in his life at that moment, which is all I don't know how much you know about drug culture, but basically they do drugs and they're up for days. They don't eat. They all fight with each other. And any conversation I would have with Zach would be drug fueled and revolve around, at one point he thought he was God and he was going to bring Christmas to the trap house. It's hard to have conversations and therefore maintain a good relationship. So it had been a little while since I had spoken with him face to face. And after the murder, I didn't actually hear from him for a week. And that was quite disturbing as well, because I wasn't sure how he was.
Did you try to reach out to him? Like, I heard this about you. Is this true? And you just didn't hear from him?
No, because he was arrested before I even found out that it had, that the murder had happened. So I just basically said, we've been here before. He's been in jail before, a number of times before. He had been out for 7 years when this happened. And it's the longest stretch prior to this that he'd ever been out of jail or juvie or whatever, maybe was 6 months. So the fact that we had gone almost 7 years helped me to think we were on the right path. But then, like I said, then the drugs came back in. And anyways, so from having the history with him, once I knew he had been arrested and what it was for, as the mom, you just sit back and wait for the call that comes from the jail. And I knew that was going to be a rough conversation. And I didn't know when it was going to happen. I didn't know the details of the murder or the arrest. I knew nothing other than there had been a shooting and someone had died and my son had been arrested. So I didn't know if he'd been beat up by the cops, if it was a peaceful arrest, if he had also been shot and retaliated. I had no idea what his physical condition was. And he didn't call me for the first week. And he told me it was because he had lost my number. I'm not sure if that's true because as a kid in jail or on the streets, you always know your mom's phone number. But it could have been that long before he came out of the drugs and got through the withdrawal and had enough sense about him to think of his mom's number.
Do you remember the first conversation you did have with him?
The conversation we had at that time was just a lot of tears. You know, I just said, "Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm okay. I'm so sorry." And we cried. There wasn't really a lot to be said at that point.
Before we finish this conversation, we do have some sponsors to talk about. The first one being BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy. So if you want to talk to a therapist, you can do so with BetterHelp in just under 48 hours. They make it very easy to connect you with a therapist, and they make it very easy to switch from therapist to therapist to find the right fit for you. So if you are going through something traumatic, or maybe you have nothing really bad going on, any pressing matters in your life, but you could always use some help with just organizing your thoughts. I like to say that it's like going to the gym for your brain. I think it's very important. I've been in therapy for years, and I think it's done wonders for me, even in times where I feel like I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today, but I leave the session feeling very good. So I would suggest it to anybody. And BetterHelp is also great because it's more affordable than in-person therapy, which can cost an arm and a leg. So it's a fraction of the cost, and you're going to save some money on top of that anyway when you go to betterhelp.com/OPL and use that code OPL for 10% off your first month. Okay, so go to betterhelp.com/OPL and save 10% off of your first month and enjoy. And we also have Squarespace. Squarespace is going to help you build your website. If you are someone who has a small business or you create content or anything like that, you are going to need to make a first impression, and you do so with your website. People are going to go to your website. If it looks bad, it can kind of turn some people off. It's your first impression. It's very important. And Squarespace is going to help you build a professional looking website in a very short amount of time. I've created a website on their platform in just a day, and they look really great. And people always give me compliments about it. And Squarespace has been a sponsor for a while now, and people have said they've used it and they've had a great experience with that. So maybe you could too. They also have a bunch of tools on their site that's going to help you optimize traffic and let you know where people are coming from, so you know where to put, more of your attention or what have you. But yeah, you can build a website with Squarespace. Anytime that we build websites over here at Santagato Studios, we are using Squarespace. So for anyone out there that would like to do that, you can go to squarespace.com/OPL and use that code OPL for 10% off of your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, so again, that is squarespace.com/OPL, and the code will be OPL, and you will get 10% off of your first purchase of a website or a domain. All right, so go out there, create your websites. Let me know how it goes. And now back to the episode. Can you talk about also, because you talked about it a bit earlier, but you had that conversation with your mother, and it's like, that's still your son, and that made you emotional at that point, and at this point he had been, robbing stores and holding up people and whatnot. Murder feels very different than that. So can you kind of talk about, your mindset around, my son has killed somebody and is in jail and is going to be in jail for a while. I mean, he murdered somebody. So can you just kind of talk about your decision to be like, I still have to be there for this person, even though in the way that you describe, you've tried to help so many times before and he hasn't listened, or just, it feels like there's nothing you can do. So just the decision at that point to be like, my son killed somebody and I'm not condoning that, but I'm going to stick, by his side. Was it any different than the last time? Was there still this internal struggle to be, I don't know if I should stay in this person's life or not?
That's a really good question. I don't think it was ever a conscious decision to proceed in any particular way after August of 2023. I had decided, again, almost 20 years ago, that this was my son and I was going to be there. Of course, as a parent, it's disappointing in a million ways to the nth degree. There's no easy way to describe what it feels like when your child has committed murder. As far as being there for him, it only changed in so much that I knew I wasn't ever going to have Christmas with him again. or celebrate his birthday with him again. I will never leave his side, but my role is mother. It's not judge and jury. It's not God. It's not victim services. My role is mother, and that's who I am and will always be for him. There is a small, I do pull back slightly during some conversations with him because I also recognize when I'm being manipulated in a conversation. An example of that is, I was talking to so-and-so and they said this, and all I really wanted was that. And that is said for my benefit to make me feel sad or badly for him. And once I feel bad for him, then a request will come for something he needs. So I've pulled back from that. I've learned to recognize that sometimes conversations are solely for his benefit. And I will stop myself from getting too emotionally involved with him in that moment to keep myself from being manipulated. That doesn't mean I don't hang up the phone and cry, recognizing that's what just happened. But all in all, I'm still his mom, and it just doesn't change. It's how am I able to be there for him while he's in prison and I'm on the outside maintaining my sanity. That sometimes is a little bit of a delicate balance.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because, you're an individual also, and I'm curious if you feel like you have to deal with judgment, like as the mother, and having your son have done this, like judgment from friends, family, even strangers.
That, oddly enough, no. Most people, we just went through the trial and the sentencing and everything, the earlier part, the first quarter of 2025. I took myself off of all social media, stopped partaking in the local news. I was protecting myself from the information. Most people presumed that I disappeared because I felt I was being judged as the mother that created the monster. I never felt that way. I never felt like I was being looked at as what did I do wrong, even though I've had those conversations with myself. And I've laid awake at night for hours and cried in bed thinking of all of the ways I've gone wrong. I've never worried about what other people thought of me, but I don't tend to live my life like that anyway. Those who know me know my story and aren't judging me. And those that don't know my story and choose to judge, that's okay because they don't matter. So I've never felt judged. I have had people reach out and say, I can't imagine what you're going through as a mother. Mm-hmm. Those are the conversations I appreciate because most people say, oh, it's so sad, your son's a murderer. But some people say, as a mother, that is your baby, and I don't know how you're getting through this. And those are the people I gravitate to because they're the ones that might have an idea of how much it hurts. Those are the people I can be myself with. So I don't feel like I've been judged. I'm sure in the court of public opinion, my son has been judged by everyone and is guilty no matter who you ask, aside from the conviction. But I don't feel like I carry that guilty sentence myself.
How do you think you got to that place? Because it feels like it could almost be 50-50 of someone in your position, either putting all the blame on themselves or being able to get to a place where they aren't judging themselves and taking that blame.
Therapy.
That's something you started right away or have been doing even before the murder?
I had actually started therapy 3 weeks before this happened for my husband in cancer. Like I said, that's been going on quite a while. And the cancer had just come back. And I had kind of said, I don't know if I can go through this again. It's devastating. And I had just started therapy. And 3 weeks later, this happened. So while the therapy continued also to be about cancer, it then also incorporated everything going on with my son. I have some pretty amazing people in my corner. I have a beautiful support system with intellectual people who truly love me. So being able to talk through it, either with therapy or someone in my support team, being able to talk through it, cry through it, lay on the floor through it, being able to get it out really helps. And in the end, between my mother and I, we have custody of my son's 11-year-old daughter. You've got to compartmentalize what you're feeling and where to put it, because other things take precedence. And again, I decided 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, I was going to be his mom, that role doesn't change. What does change is how involved I am in that relationship. And I've got to keep myself sane. Therapy, again, really helped me to see that. My support team allowed me to have those nights where I cried in bed, blaming myself. And they held me while I cried. And then the next day they said, you're not to blame, right? He is 33 years old. Things I have done in our lifetime together as mother and son have helped shape him as a person. But we all have something from our childhood. We all have demons that we're fighting, or skeletons in our closet. I've never murdered anyone, and I can't say I never would. Hey, you do something to my granddaughter and incapacitate her. I can't say that those feelings wouldn't overtake you in a moment of passion. I understand how it happens, but there's nothing in me that is angry enough or violent enough to even conceive of murder.
And
so
how do you describe this situation to the 11-year-old?
Well, that's interesting, because there was no conversation. We have had custody of her since she was 9 months old. So her father, my son, was with the baby mama. They get into a really big fight on Father's Day. The first year my granddaughter was around, she wouldn't let him see the baby. He broke into her house and held a knife to her. So he was arrested for that one. And the mom was on drugs and not in a good position to be taking care of children. So we ended up with the baby. So my granddaughter's never really had a relationship with her dad, or her mom for that matter. She knows her dad. She knows his name is Daddy, but she doesn't know who he is, and she hasn't had a relationship. So when all of this transpired, there was no conversation with a then 9-year-old. But she was at a friend's house one day down the street, and I don't know how it came to be, but she mentioned her name, and a neighbor said, "Oh, I know your dad. He just killed someone, didn't he?"
Wow.
She was 9.
That's a crazy thing to say to a 9-year-old.
Jeez.
It was insane. It was insane. So then my granddaughter goes up to her house with my mother and says, "Daddy killed somebody. What happened?" And so then my mother kind of had to give her the brief details, but then she went down to talk to the neighbor to say, hey, she wasn't aware of any of these details. We hadn't told her. She's a kid. The neighbor apologizes, but the next time my granddaughter's down there, they have another conversation, and he gives even more details. So my mother went down again and said, hey, cease and desist kind of thing. And she was far better. But I was ready to go to his house and tear a strip off. I'm like, who does that? What is wrong with your brain that you divulge this or even discuss it? Pretend she knows. Why do you think it appropriate to have a discussion with a 9-year-old about murder? Yeah. You know, it was out of it. So these days, she now knows what has happened. She knows he's in jail. She did ask me about a month ago, how long is Dad going to be in jail? And I said, quite a while. She said, a really long time? I said, yeah, probably. She said, okay. She asks questions, just 1 or 2 questions every once in a while. She's given the truth as much as, I didn't need to say to her, he's in jail for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's going to be in jail for a long time and we'll work through it. If someday she decides she wants to go and confront the man who helped create her, we'll do that. If she decides she never wants to see him, we'll do that too. We will get into therapy. We will make sure that she is looked after given where she's come from. However, she is a beautifully well-rounded, kind, empathetic, compassionate, happy little girl. And that's a true testament to the people around her that have raised her, primarily my mother, God love her. She's a great little girl. And while she does have a history, that history is not going to define her.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. A testament to you as well, I'm sure.
We all have a hand in it. It takes a village.
That's for sure. Do you visit your son?
I have. So the trial started in January and it went for a full month. Once he was finally convicted, he was found guilty. Then we had to wait for a sentencing. So he was sentenced on March 14th. He was sentenced. I got to see him on March 17th before they took him from county jail here locally to prison. The prison he's in currently is a 90-day intake kind of thing. So he's assessed for a whole lot of things. And they hang on to him and try and find a bed for him in another prison. He called last week and has just been assigned his prison. He will be transported there within the month. And once he gets to that place, I'll be able to go and see him. I did see him often when he was here locally in my same city while we were waiting for trial. He was held for a year and a half, and I saw him frequently, every other week maybe. Saw him quite a bit, but through glass and over the phone, how you see on TV. I haven't laid my hands on him or put my arms around him in 2 years. So once he gets placed in the prison he'll be housed in to start serving his sentence, I'll be able to visit and hug him and hold him and kiss his face. It's been a long time.
Wow. Well, we thank you for, being so open and honest about all of this. And like you said in the email that you first sent, it's a tough position because there's seemingly no support groups necessarily, or it's maybe a story that the average person won't want to hear because they are so quick to judge or, think that there's...
that's what it is. Like I said, my husband, we've been dealing with cancer since October of 2019. That's an open, honest conversation you can have with anyone. Hey, Trish, how you making out? The cancer's back. We're really struggling. People get that. But when they say, hey, how you making out? And I say, I'm really struggling. My son's just been convicted of murder. How do you have that conversation with anybody? And, when the cancer's there, you call for me, because I'm in Canada, you call the Canadian Cancer Society and say, hey, this is my situation. Are there support groups anywhere? I'm really struggling. And yeah, you can find a support group for just sex addicts, have support groups. And I don't even know if I believe in sex addiction. But, I look at in my local area in the last few years, we've had some really, really serious mass shootings. And I've always thought of their parents, because in the news, there isn't one person that's going to stand up for that murderer and say, but I know him, he's a beautiful guy. Everyone on social media is so eager to jump on anybody for anything. Give them a reason and nothing good is coming out of their mouth. Who do you talk to? How do you find other parents of murderers? How do you connect with them? How do you find like-minded people with similar stories that can appreciate what you're living through? There are none. There's nobody. There's nothing. We all just sit and suffer in silence and try and stay away from headlines. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I don't know. I would love to have a conversation with anybody else that's been through this. Anyone else. Because it is a very isolating issue.
Before we wrap up, I do have one last question. Earlier, you had said my job and my title is mother. Can you tell me in your own words what it means to have that title and what that job means?
As a mother, right, wrong, indifferent, your duty and your care is your child. You've brought them into the world. You have to look out for them the best that you can. Some things are out of your control, but the things that are under your control are things you need to do. One of the things that is under my control is loving my son, being there for him when the phone rings, going to see him even though he's in prison. He's not going to get out. That's another difficult thing to deal with is I'm going to die while my son is in prison. And I may not get to see him before I go. He may not get to see me before I go. But in every way I can, I need to maintain the relationship of mother to let him know he's not alone. He hasn't been abandoned. I will be the one constant. I won't leave him. I am always by your side. It just depends on what capacity we're able to do it in that moment. But I will never leave him. I don't like what he did. I don't excuse what he did. Nothing. There's no part of me that says any part of this is even understandable, let alone okay. But as his mom, I'm going to love him through it. That's my job.
Well, thank you again for sharing that, for being so honest and just being able to articulate this existence and this situation that I think we all have a better understanding of now can be so isolating and something that you are constantly navigating now with the sort of added pressure of having your granddaughter be under your care, getting older, becoming more aware. You're obviously going through a lot, and we appreciate you again choosing our platform and sharing this. And while there is no support system for this, the show does have a wide reach, and I think that there is a chance that at least someone listening to this and hearing your story is in a similar position. So if that's the case.
I appreciate that a lot, because that was one of the things that prompted me to even reach out to you. Was I do know that you have a large audience, and maybe I might be able to connect with someone out there who is also going through something similar. Maybe I can help them. Maybe they can help me. Or maybe just hearing somebody's voice talk about it is enough for somebody else. I don't know. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to put it out there and for the possibility of someone to reach back. I do appreciate you very much for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that will be the case. I feel very confidently about that. And if someone does reach out, then we're happy to connect you as well, if that's something that you would want.
That would be super. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on and taking the time today. We wish you the best of luck and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Of course. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Man, that is such a difficult thing that you never really think about. It's like one of those things that you never think about is like, you know, because sometimes you see it on the news, like there's a mass murder or a murder in general, and then they have the parents, and the parents look so confused and shell shocked, like what the fuck is going on, you know, and like it would be very difficult not to blame yourself and feel like I had a hand in this, and to know that that is like the gaze and the judgment of others, you know, yeah, there's a mass shooting, you know, they show the parents. It's like, yeah, what did you guys do? And and you just almost naturally do think like, what was the upbringing? What happened here? Did they know? Which is rough. I mean, that's a pretty rough like judgment to deal with. And just to echo her point, like, dude, I'm not a fucking murderer. Like, I'm not the one who's doing all this stuff. And at a certain point, your children are out of the house and they make their own decisions and they get into the wrong things, especially in this situation, also drugs, the wrong crowds. Like your child, you're not in complete control. You can only do the best you can.
It's the absolute scariest thing about parenting. Yeah.
And it's just not, you know, it's not necessarily fair to always point to the parents. I think that in some situations, absolutely the upbringing and the parents are to blame for, you know, a lot of the stuff, but it shouldn't be this like snap reaction where it's like something happens and it's like, well, let's look at these fucking parents and they're probably assholes. Like it's not fair, because I think that people make decisions, especially if they're an adult. I mean, if there's a child who lives under your roof who's, you know, that's when you start being like, okay, the parents are not doing their job, because it's like you're 8 years old and you're out like robbing stores, or, you know, you're out at 4 a.m. doing this thing. It's like, how do you not know where your kid is? Like there's things like that, like negligence is, you know, when kids are young, but even a kid as young as 18 years old, it's like, how much control do you have over an 18-year-old these days, where they have access to the internet, they're hanging out with their friends as early as 14, 15, like out there becoming a different person, or like, you know, it's hard. I mean, you try to do the best you can. And, you know, I've heard I'm not a parent myself, but I've heard parents always say the same thing in this, like, I don't know if I'm doing a good job type of thing. Like you try your best, but I don't know. There's no way to quantify that unless you can look at the end result of like your child at 40 years old being successful and an upstanding citizen, like whatever. But there's no other way to kind of, you know, be like, yes, I am doing a good job. Here's my, you know, whatever, because you could have a good day, you could have a bad day, or, you know, someone can make a decision in 5 years that erases everything in your head of like, oh, I did a good job. So it's hard to, you know, to raise a kid to begin with. It's very difficult. So I sympathize with her position.
Yeah, but her ability to kind of share this is, I think it'll resonate with everyone, parents in general. And then, yeah, if there is someone listening who's in a similar position, and it's just good to see that she is working so hard to process this through therapy, through a support system. That's important. You know, before we got on this call, it's really a mystery of, is this person going to, you know, be processing this and blaming themselves, or not blaming themselves, or are they going to be completely, you know, blaming themselves, wishing they could do things differently, saying that it's their fault. But it seems like she's in a good place, so to speak, for the position that she's in. And I hope that it does resonate with other people out there, because that just seems like it can truly just be such a lonely, isolated position to be in as the parent of someone who does that. So hopefully someone else can hear her words.
Yeah. And for anyone else out there that would like to be a guest on our show, hit us up. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us your story and we'll get back to you.
Yep. New episodes every 2 weeks. So send those emails. We're always reading them, reaching out, recording, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at OPL Podcast.
That is all. See you next time.